Here it is, the phone that's getting a lot of hype because of its 1-inch sensor. It's not actually the first phone to have a 1-inch camera sensor. This, however, the 12S Ultra is a co-engineered phone with Leica. So Xiaomi's new partnership with Leica hopefully is going to bring some really solid results with this new setup with the camera, but also using Leica color profiles instead of, well, of course, Xiaomi's own. Now, this is still just a phone, so I'll be reviewing all of the phone features and not just our camera here. Now, I'm not going to read out the whole spec sheet because it is basically like they took the Xiaomi 12 Pro and then added a new camera sensor. 120Hz, 67-watt fast charging, and all, of course, powered by that new Qualcomm chip, the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. Now, at the time of me recording this video, this is a Chinese exclusive release, so there's no global model yet. It could happen. There are rumors. So in the box, you will find a Type-C to Type-A cable, our charger, which is 67 watts. Strange that Xiaomi didn't go with their 120-watt charging tech for this. You'll find a little leaflet that is all in Chinese, just pointing out where things are. And then we do have a TPU clear case. Of course, it's got quite a large area here to cover that exceptionally large camera module. This is what it looks like with the case on it. So it is very thick, very large, and it's a heavy phone. So it weighs 225 grams. And if you measure, well, Xiaomi claims if you measure here, it's only 9.1 millimeters. But including that very large camera module here, the huge camera bulge, it's actually 14 millimeters, so that's quite thick. So you can see here, this is the 12 Pro. Next to the 12S Ultra, you see the difference there in the thickness of both of them. They are the same size. So the sides look the same. We've got metal frame around them, Gorilla Glass, Victus with it, and the same screen size too. They are in fact using the same screen hardware. So if I just use the fingerprint reader now, you see that it unlocks reasonably good speed. It's quite fast. We have the curved screen. More on that screen soon, but the front-facing camera, 32 megapixels, and it is still only with 1080p video. That's a bit disappointing there. So with our Type-C port, this is another area where Xiaomi just seems to refuse to get up with the times compared to the competition out there. So it's only USB 2 spec, does not have video out. We've got the Harman Kardon tuned speakers, so downward firing speaker. SIM tray only takes 2 nano SIMs, of course, no micro SD card support anymore. And then up the top, you will see the branding there. We have an IR transmitter, mic. So this top here is flat, the bottom flat there, where it is curved with the 12 Pro. And the 12 Pro size does feel a little bit nicer, of course, in hand, being a little bit smaller there too, and slightly different where the speakers are, but they're basically the same hardware. I may, later on in the video, do a bit of a comparison with loudspeakers too. So the camera is, of course, getting all the attention, but it's not just a camera. Now, it does have, of course, what looks like that must be the 1-inch sensor, right? It's not. That's the ultra-wide right there in the middle. The 1-inch sensors here at the top, and then we have our 5x optical camera. So those two there, 48 megapixels, and then the, of course, main sensor, that one is a 50 megapixel sensor. Now it's got an f1.9 aperture to it, which is a little higher than I imagine they would probably have gone for, but they must have their reasons, especially pairing up with Leica. You see the Leica branding there too, and you see the camera module difference compared to other phones and just how big it really is. And you see here next to the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra with its cameras, there's just a massive difference. So yeah, big, huge. So the material on the back here, they call it eco leather, whatever that means. I guess it's a synthetic leather, which it does feel like. Looks good, doesn't really pick up smudges. This area does, it's metal. Now tapping here on the back glass, if it is glass, it must be very thin because it almost feels like plastic to me. So you have to be very careful. I imagine if you drop this phone and it lands near this camera module, game over, you're probably going to get a big crack through it. A little bit more about that screen. So it is the same as the 12 Pro, which is right here. So the 12S Ultra, it's 1440p screen, and it is 6.73 inches, 120 hertz, and under display right here, we've got a lot of options. So you've got your dark mode, that's all pretty standard there with Android 12, right? But you can change and adjust the resolution there. Now, I do run the WQHD Plus because that's the screen we've got in here, so why kind of run a lower resolution? However, if you need to save on battery life, of course, do change that resolution, drop it down a little bit. You barely kind of notice the difference unless you're looking at it really, really closely. So we've got a refresh rate selection here, which I really do like because we've got the sweet spot, which is 90 Hertz. Now notice that we've got some banding happening right here. On the left here, this is the S22 Ultra. Now, it's the Exynos version, not that it really matters. They're using the same screen with the Snapdragon version anyway. It's not showing the banding here, but it doesn't seem to have DC dimming. So there's no DC dimming option that I can select. People say that, yes, it's hidden away in the developer options, but I'm not going there because it doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't seem to do anything. So hardware-wise, I don't think it actually has DC dimming. That's really the only disappointing thing about the screen. It's not 100% flat. It's got curved edges, and you can go and adjust, of course, all of the options when it comes to color scheme. So you've got vivid, which is the default, saturated, original, a lot of different settings in there, and you can go and adjust the white balance there. So it is a good screen. It's got a peak brightness Xiaomi claim of 1500 nits. I don't think it actually peaks that much. I think it's just over 1000 nits, but yes, you can make it out in direct sunlight, which is the main thing. So the only thing that does bother me is just the banding sometimes. I really wish it had DC dimming. Now, my reviews may be in-depth, but I'm not going to go in-depth really here with MIUI because I think most people know a lot about MIUI. You're probably Xiaomi fans. You're very familiar with their UI. So here on the right, we do have the 12 Pro. So this is the Ultra. So the Ultra performance has been very good. It's quick, it's fast, it's snappy. I always run the forced 120 Hertz setting there. Animations look good. Gesture detection is very good. And touch response is excellent. No real problems with it. Now, there are a few things that I have noticed, and that is that sometimes I've gone to click the settings, like now, and nothing happens. Or it'll be very slow to respond. Okay, that's come up a little bit quicker then, but sometimes it's being slow. So that's just one area they need to focus on, I think, sometimes. Not what I would call the touch response, but the actual application response. There's a couple of times it's done that. The others have been with the launcher itself, that when I've had the phone, for example, sitting overnight and just gone to unlock it, it has been a little bit slow to load in everything. And for a split second, I see that little spinning icon. I also do see it happen here with the 12 Pro, which is also running, of course, MIUI 13. Now, when MIUI 13 first came out, I did state that it was a mess, and it was. There were so many bugs. It is, thankfully, a lot better now. It has matured throughout the year, and it is getting better, but it's not quite perfect. And that's the thing with Xiaomi. Their software always seems to be the key area that lets down these phones, is it's always bugs, little glitches and things, and minor annoyances. You've got to bear that in mind. And we do have the Chinese ROM with this. So the ROM, there's lots of little extra settings and things, but I know a lot of people do ask about some of these things. So there is this, the gaze detect. So it's detecting that you're actually looking at it and it won't lock the screen. You do have the double tap to wake and you have raise to wake as well. Now I've got both of those disabled, and we do have the always on display. You've got plenty of options with this. You can see it does load in a lot of things there. Now, I don't tend to run this personally because it does affect the battery a little bit. It slowly sips away at the battery, so it does lower your standby time, which is normal. So this is the version of firmware that I'm reviewing with this phone, which did come through as a recent update to fix bugs and improve the camera. Now, there will probably be a lot of updates. I imagine there's going to be at least probably 4 or 5 before the end of the year, and they'll probably be pushing that camera performance to try and perfect it and improve upon just the image results. Of course, cameras I'll get onto later on. Now, this is a bit of the bloatware you're going to have to contend with. There's going to be a lot of applications that also send through notifications in Chinese. That's all annoying, and that's just part of what it's like when you do import a Chinese phone with the MIUI 13 Chinese version. Now, you can easily install Google Play. You can see it's here, it's working. So all you need to do is just simply download the latest Play Store APK. The framework's all there in the ROM, so you just install it, then you log in, and you are fine, you're all set. Now, charge time here, it's actually about 48 minutes is what I got. Now, this is 67 watt charging. Don't worry about this here because it didn't, for some reason, time it right. There was a split. It stopped charging for a split second, then started again. Could be when it's swapping over between 2 different cells. I'm not really too sure. But that's why there's that little difference there. So charge time is fine, anything under an hour. Oh, this right here. I was going to post this to Twitter, but I decided not to. But the audio bitrate, what are you doing, Xiaomi? Why are we still using the default 96 kilobits per second? It's a simple line of code. You need to change the bitrate audio. That's for our videos, right? The audio quality. They're still using a very low bit rate. It should be 320, which they have used in the past. So fixed battery life test here. This is not realistic, but it's a good way to gauge it between other devices I test out. Real world use, 120 Hz. You are looking at just scraping over about 7 hours of use. Standby battery drain has been interesting. Not amazing. We're losing about 7-8% or so overnight, which is, it's okay. I'm seeing definitely worse, but it could be a little bit better. Some optimization needed. So we've got here, of course, the new Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. It's a better process. Shouldn't be as hot, but I'll get onto that soon. And should be more efficient. So it is about 10% faster. We can compare that to the 12 Pro here, which gets, you can see there, close to 1 million points. We're now over 1 million points. Now I'm going to just add a few other devices here. This is the Redmagic 7S Pro. That is a fan-cooled phone, and so far it is the fastest when it comes to gaming performance that I've tested out. And the thermals on this one, it didn't get quite as hot too. It only went up 3 degrees, where that went up 10. That was 9 degrees. So you can kind of see where I'm heading with the thermals, but more on that soon. Oh, and I've just got, for reference, to the Exynos version of the S22 Ultra, which still gets a decent speed, but it doesn't feel when gaming quite as good as especially Redmagic 7S, but gaming I'll show you soon. So the internal storage speeds, they are good, as you expect for UFS 3.1. Good random writes there. The reads could be faster, but hey, no one's ever going to notice that, just in synthetic benchmarks. Geekbench 5 score, excellent, very good, as you'd expect. And the Geekbench score here for the Vulkan score, well, I expected this to be a little bit higher, but since it's not fan-cooled, there was no way it was going to be able to make, I think, 7,000 points there, unless you put it in a freezer or something. And it does have a widevine level 1 cert and camera to API level 3 support. Over to the audio. So first and foremost, it is a phone, not a camera to me. So you can place voice calls on it and the quality is good. I just wanted to mention it. No problems. It sounds like any other flagship out there. There's active noise cancelling in the background. And I don't seem to have any proximity sensor issues either with the 12S Ultra. Now, loudspeaker-wise, both of these models here from Xiaomi, they are Harman Kardon tuned, the speakers. We've got the 12 Pro at the top and then the 12S Ultra here. So I'll play the 12S Ultra first and then this one, then go back so you can hear the differences between the loudspeakers on these two models. All right, you should have been able to hear and distinguish the difference between them, that yes, the 12S Ultra is a little bit louder, a little bit richer sounding, and as expected, does have the better loudspeakers, so it should. Time to test the thermal performance now of the new Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. So this is Genshin Impact. If you're unaware, it's probably the most demanding game that you can play on Android and even iOS. And I'm running the top settings here at 60 frames per second. So you can see right now, 60 frames per second. It's looking good. But what I want to know is actually how hot is it going to get? So you can see the frame rate's dipping down a little bit. The only phones that I've seen that can maintain a solid 60 frames per second, even after 30 minutes or 1 hour of gaming, are the fan-cooled gaming phones. Funny that. The Redmagic ones that I do test out in the channel here. So you can see right now we're only at about 56 frames per second. It is looking quite good. So with spells and things, occasionally they're big frame dips down to 49. That's normal because it's caching things in, loading things up that weren't there previously. So that's normal. It happens on other phones. So what I'll do now is I'm going to play for up to about 40 minutes and we'll see how the frame rate fares. Is it going to really throttle down? And most importantly, will it overheat? And how hot will it get? So here we are now after 40 minutes of gaming and it is now down to about 33 frames per second, clearly throttling. So if it's not fan-cooled, it will throttle, it seems, when it comes to the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, just like the previous one. But it does seem to be a little less Okay, so the rear is getting up to about 42 degrees after 40 plus minutes of gaming. The front of it, just around where the Type-C port is, there's a bit of a hot patch right there. That's about 40 degrees. Now, these thermals are better than what I've seen in the Xiaomi 12 Pro, the Xiaomi 12X, and the Xiaomi 12. So it looks like that the new chip, the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, is a little cooler, or the cooling thermal solution that Xiaomi's used is better than those previous models. Moving over to the cameras, which are getting a lot of hype. Well, really only one camera is getting the big hype, and that's the 1-inch sensor. But before I get onto that, front-facing camera, so it's only 1080p. That's all you can shoot, 1080p 30 and 60. And that's really disappointing, especially 2022. It's well overdue by many, many years for them to start using 4K. Now, we've got electronic image stabilization. The quality for 1080p is pretty good. It's quite detailed. Now, if I look a little red, that's not the camera's color science. That's in fact me, because it's 40 degrees right now. It's absolutely sweltering hot. It's about 80% humidity. I'm dying, but let's take a look at the rear cameras now. How does the 1-inch sensor fare then with video quality? So this is 4K 30, which is matching my timeline. That's why I shoot 4K 30. You can also shoot 4K 60 and 8K at 24 frames per second. So it does have optical image stabilization, even though it's a very large sensor. And as I pan around, we may possibly see a little bit of judder come through. It's quite common with Android phones, but more so I find with Xiaomi's optimization with their cameras. Now I am, yet again, I'm a broken record here, disappointed with the audio quality. The bitrate is only 96 kilobits per second. Xiaomi, they just need to change this. Now normally they use 320 kilobits per second with their flagship phones, but they seem to have taken a step backwards and forgotten to change the bitrate. Now you can swap over to the ultra wide on the go, as you can see now. It's a 0.5 times zoom. You fit a lot more in, but the quality doesn't look quite as good, but the stabilization still seems very good. And this is just electronic image stabilization. So let's now finally test out the zoom. So I'm going to zoom into our castle here, the castle of Denya. So that's 1 times, 2 times, it's all digital. And then at 5 times, you can see it has now swapped over to that 5 times optical camera. 48 megapixels, it does have optical image stabilization. And the stability quite good. It's not that difficult for me to take a look here closer at the town. Now you're probably hearing quite a bit of wind noise on the microphones. That's because, well, I'm on the coast here. It seems to always be windy. This is a sample of 8K footage, so we just have the optical image stabilization now, no electronic, and it has a limit of just 6 minutes. Why do they impose that? Well, I think after the 6 minutes it will really start to overheat, especially in summer. Right now it's about 40 degrees Celsius, so it could even happen before the 6 minutes is up. So the 1-inch sensor, my first initial experience with it was a bit disappointing. The areas where this camera setup does fail, or at least that 1-inch sensor, to me is the focus. The focus is very hit and miss. You do need to often take 2 or 3, 4 photos to get one that's actually good. It's quite hit and miss. This is common with Xiaomi that I have found in the past with some of their phones, especially when it's just come out. So to me, it's still quite in its infancy when it comes to the software optimization of the sensor. Their hardware, I can see, has a great potential there. I love those portrait shots. I do like the Leica color profiles, especially that more natural one. Not to say the vivid one, but the natural one to me looks quite good. And we are getting really close to that area where you can take a photo with this, depending on what type of photo and what scenario, that it almost looks like, hang on, was that actually taken on a mobile phone? It's getting that good. So lots of potential there with the sensor, but then we run into, well, other things that Xiaomi seems to always do. Like, why do we have the low audio bitrate yet again? I'm a broken record here. Front-facing camera. I've been ranting on about this for years now. Still no 4K video. All the competition, all the Apples, Samsung's out there with the 4K front-facing cameras, much better quality. Even some of them have autofocus. Xiaomi has autofocus front-facing camera sensors and lens setups. Why don't they use it in this? Software limitations. Why do we still have only USB 2 speeds out of the Type-C port? Why no video out on it? There's those continual things that it seems Xiaomi just doesn't want to ever improve upon, or they just keep ignoring it for some reason. So it's got a lot of potential, this phone here. The software is looking quite good. MIUI 13, now with all the phones I've reviewed of Xiaomi this year, is, yes, getting there. Slowly, but surely it's getting there. Originally it was a mess, and I made a video about when I first got the Xiaomi 12 Pro, the software was an absolute mess. So is it worth it? Is it living up to all of that hype it's getting? I think it isn't so far. I really think if someone said to me, hey, here's €1,000 or $1,000, go and buy a flagship, I would probably overlook this and I would probably go for a Samsung or an Apple for the software experience. Have more stable software, and of course it's a local device. This is an import one. You've got the Chinese software elements to it, some annoying notifications you need to fix it, all that sort of stuff. But between these two, I mean, when you can look at the low light performance too with the cameras, I think the 12 Pro was actually better than this overhyped main sensor. Well, the sensor's got potential, but I don't know. I think if I was looking at both of these, I would save my money and I would go for a local version of the Xiaomi 12 Pro versus the 12S Ultra. But I do hope things change. If the global version release does actually happen and it comes out, I will try to review it if hopefully Xiaomi sends me a unit, and I'll let you know on all the improvements. Hopefully they've tweaked and refined that camera software-wise, the optimization, color science and everything. Most importantly, the focus. And then we've got a much better packaging experience where I could wholeheartedly go, yes, it lives up to the hype. But at this stage, it doesn't, I don't think. So thanks a lot for watching this, yes, lengthy, long video here on the 12S Ultra. But I do hope for potential buyers out there, it does answer all possible questions. And if it doesn't, let me know in the comments and I'll try to get around to answering you.